Hey guys, Zack here, and this is my review of Danny Phantom. Okay, so this episode, Living Large, well, essentially what happens is, this episode is the final episode to feature the guys in white, which is sad because, they were fun. But they were fun bad guys. But essentially, the premise is that they buy Fenton Works, which enables Danny to just move into a new house and kind of live life to the fullest. Now that he has a lot of money and his parents have a lot of money, but causes them to become a lot more snobbish. But ultimately find out that the guys in white have ulterior motives and are planning to do something pretty sinister that could be very dangerous, but ultimately isn't because of how it plays out in the episode. But in case you know, the episode does open up by establishing that the Fenton Works lab is not all that high tech. We find out that Danny is hanging out with Sam and Tucker when suddenly Jack bursts into the room and asks him if they would volunteers them for a job down in the Fenton Works building, and they go down. They're of course dragged down into the basement where they establish that they're trying to get their old equipment to work. Essentially, what the premise is that the Fenton Works lab is established to be very low tech. They are essentially what they're trying to do with like a star reading or something. I don't fully remember what. I'm pretty sure that's mainly what they're doing. But they have a satellite. They're trying to do like a spectral interference thing. And what they're doing is they're having Danny leaning up against a photon generator to keep it stable, so that it because it only works if you tilt it a little bit to the left. They also have Sam hold the device up and request that she never move ever. And then finally, they have Tucker bang on one of the pieces of equipment with a mug when it goes staticky, which of course, all of them remark it isn't particularly high tech, and obviously the machine does not work all that well. I forget specifically what the machine's designed to do, but it's clearly being held together by duct tape, and does not actually function all that well. But ultimately, when the machine doesn't work, Jack would remark that it would definitely be nice if they could afford better equipment more often. Pointing out that while they do make money off their inventions and their patents, they aren't like rich. They make enough to provide for their family, but that's about it. But it's at this point where the guys in white come downstairs with Jazz remarking that they have company. It's this point where the guys in white proceed to respond that they're there to buy the Fenton Works from Jack. And of course, Jack initially refuses because while he does admit that he admires the guys in white and wants to be more like them in terms of their ghost hunting prowess, he does tell them that he's put his heart and soul into his lab and it's not for sale. He winds up singing a completely different tune, however, when they hand him the check and he sees how many zeros are on it. And of course, Maddie is upset with him when he sells the lab, but then she also sees the check and ultimately they do wind up moving out. But in any case, they wind up packing everybody into the Fenton RV to move to a new location where they wind up moving to what we find out is Vlad's neighborhood, the rich part of town that they normally aren't supposed to live in. And Vlad is of course very confused to see Jack in his neighborhood, pointing out that Jack shouldn't be able to afford it. But of course Jack first and foremost greets Vlad as a new neighbor, but also points out that yes, he can't afford the neighborhood now because he now has he reveals that they just came into a large sum of money and can now afford it and are being paid by the government. And of course, Vlad is initially annoyed about the fact that that Jack has essentially moved in next door, and that makes him very angry. But then also becomes a lot more happy when he remembers that Maddie will also be living next door. So and he just momentarily forgets that Maddie will live next door now. So he decides that to just swallow his pride and make Jack a welcome basket, which he says he'll deliver at a later date. But in case everybody ultimately gets moved in, but Danny, before they actually left, reveals that he actually put a lock in the ghost portal, and that ultimately winds up being what the main conflict of the episode. The guys in white want to get the ghost portal open, but unfortunately they cannot because Danny put a lock on it before he left, and it's password encrypt locked, so they obviously can't get into it. But of course, Danny is also visibly upset because he obviously reveals that without the ghost portal, he can't really go to the ghost zone anymore, which of course frustrates him because he does need to have ready access to the ghost zone, because, in case something happens. But of course Tucker and Sam have come along for the ride, and Tucker reassures Danny that it'll be fine, pointing out that Danny has it made. That he has money and all the other things that he wants, but and does point out that he should be fine. But meanwhile, Sam is also kind of skeptical with Danny, pointing out that she obviously understands that Danny's a little bit paranoid about the guys in white having access to the ghost portal, because as she points out, the guys in white are clearly up to something if they're buying the Fenton Works. She points out that there's no way there isn't something shady going on there. But of course Danny does ultimately decide to relax for a little bit because he does point out that he did put a lock on it, so he does admit that it'll probably be fine. But we also find out that Jack is excited because his mansion came with a butler named Hobson, who does a couple of things for them, and is currently bringing up a variety of how he puts it, bizarre concoctions for smoothies, and Hobson is visibly disgusted whenever he has to take an order from Danny and his friends. But in case we do get a cutaway from the guys in white, and what we find out is in keeping with the parody of them being like the Men in Black. All of them refer to each other by by letters rather than names, and of course, one of them is named K, who is obviously a parody of Agent K from Men in Black, of course. Actually, the two main guys we've seen up until this point have been parodies of J and K from Men in Black. They're supposed to be that way, but of course, the Men in Black are actually arguing amongst themselves, trying to figure out how to get the ghost portal open. Pointing out that it's clearly password locked and that they need to figure out the password so they can get in. But of course, it is also at this point where they also point out that you need to figure it out because, as it's revealed, they have a missile that they need to launch. But in case the next day, we find out that Danny has actually skipped school because he's got money now. He can afford to do that. But and this, of course, causes Tucker to become very visibly annoyed. Pointing out that he obviously skipped school just to play video games. But obviously pointing out that they promised to meet Sam at the Fenton Works. Danny points out that just kind of responds that Tucker and Sam don't need to worry about it because he put a password lock on the Fenton portal. There's no way the Men in Black are going to be able to get in. So, but of course Tucker, annoyed that Danny isn't going to help, proceeds to hang up. At which point they proceed to sneak into the Fenton Works to try and figure out what the Men in Black are up to. And they of course are able to successfully sneak in through one of the vents, and they quickly discover that Men in Black are talking amongst themselves, and first and foremost they're tripping over themselves and the equipment because of how old and outdated it is. They cannot figure out how to get any of the equipment to work. And unfortunately they're becoming just increasingly frustrated, but do respond that their ultimate end goal is to blow up the ghost zone. They reveal that their entire plan is to launch a missile into the ghost zone that will wipe the entire thing off the map. And this, of course, Sam and Tucker hear this, and Sam points out that Tucker, since Tucker, is the more nerdier of them, does point out that if it'll be a good thing if a plane of existence is wiped off the map, and of course, Tucker points out the obvious that no, it's not. Obviously, if the ghost zone, if a world is removed from the reality, it would ultimately cause the entire reality to potentially implode. And we also find out that the ghost zone and the human world are linked. If what happens to one happens to the other. So if the ghost zone is destroyed, so is the Earth. And unfortunately, that means that the guys in white are stupid enough to blow up pretty much their universe to take down to eradicate all ghosts, which is ultimately revealed to be their end goal. And of course, realizing that this is going to be a huge problem, they go and get Danny. And of course, Danny has no interest in helping. As we find out, he's currently playing with a new robot, and he's made robots in facilities of Sam and Tucker, but ultimately he's trying to box with the Tucker one. But of course Sam and Tucker immediately barge in, telling Danny about what they've overheard at the Fenton Works, and do note that it is in fact a very bizarre, that they do know that it's a very bizarre experience to see themselves as robots. Obviously, Tucker points out is amazed at the idea that he's now half man, half machine, and pointing out that people said it couldn't be done. While Sam points out that her likeness being attributed to a robot is a huge invasion of privacy. But ultimately, they decide they don't care and tell Danny that they're going to be destroyed. That the guys in white are trying to destroy the ghost zone. And of course, Danny just proceeds to laugh it off, pointing out that he's not worried in the slightest. And of course, we find out that obviously the minute he points out that he ultimately locked it with a password, revealing that the password is Open Sesame, and does respond that the guys in white are no way going to be able to get in. But of course, Sam does kind of recognize that Danny isn't really acting like himself. She notes that the money he's come into has seemingly caused him to become a little bit corrupt and conceited. And she responds that she knows from personal experience that this is unfortunately what happens with money. That it can change people if they let it. Because she comes from a rich background. She of course tries to stay true to herself as she can without telling everybody that she's filthy rich. But of course Danny points out that she doesn't. But of course Danny refuses to listen to her. So she of course becomes annoyed and leaves. And she and Tucker leave to go stop the guys in white before things go wrong. Meanwhile, we find out that Jack is actually in the process of building what he refers to as Fenton Works 2, and he has bought a drill that is a drill / cappuccino machine to help make a new ghost portal for them to go in and out of. And he remarks that it's the most expensive lab that money can buy, pointing out that he's spared no expense in upgrading Fenton Works and creating Fenton Works 2. And of course, we also find out that Jazz has her own personal library. She's very visibly excited about it, but we find out that she's if anybody needs her, she'll be in her library stacks. But of course we find out that this is through a monitor, and of course Maddie and Jack are both happy about the fact that they're now rich, but also proceed to point out that in the process something feels missing. They realize that they kind of miss the one-on-one interaction with their kids a little bit, and do remark that they feel like it's not as cozy as the Fenton Works is how they put it. They feel like they don't get to see their kids as often as they would like, and also remark that, and of course Jack realizes that yes, all the money in the world can't really replace that feeling. So they start to feel like that the new house was probably a mistake. But in any case. It is at this point where Sam and Tucker once again try to sneak into the Fenton Works, but while trying to sneak in, they are ultimately immediately caught by the guys in white, the guys in white proceed to shackle them to the basement, where they then proceed to reveal that their ultimate end goal is to eradicate all ghosts, and their plan is to just destroy the ghost zone and eradicate the world of the gross ghost infected half, as they put it. But and of course insist that they are the good guys, pointing out that they're ultimately that they just want to keep everybody safe from ghosts. But of course, Sam points out that this is obviously they're making a huge mistake, pointing out that if they wipe out the ghost zone, they'll take the entire world with it, and points out that what they're doing is incredibly dangerous. But they ultimately respond. They just continue to go on with their business, but quickly realize that they can't actually get into and still can't get into the ghost portal. They've tried every password and cannot get in, and cannot get in. Meanwhile, Danny, of course, starts to feel lonely as well. He's starting to realize that his friends are kind of right, and he feels like his wealth has kind of made him realize that he's a little bit lonely, because all he really has for companionship is Hobson, who and of course Hobson does note the look on his face, the look of obvious absence on his face. He notes that Danny feels a bit crestfallen, and Danny does point out that he feels like he's missing a part of him. He feels like he's missing a part of himself. He feels like he's not really, he hasn't felt like himself since he's moved into the new mansion. And of course, Hobson does proceed to point out that maybe if he's not feeling like himself, he should consider finding a way to, feel more like himself. Pointing out that he should really seek out his friends, try to hang out more, and overall, just try to be the person he wants to be rather than the person the money has, made him. And of course, Danny does ultimately decide to take Hobson's advice to heart and does thank him before flying off and deciding to go deal with the guys in white and keep them from destroying the ghost zone. He does fly off to Fenton Works, but quickly discovers that obviously the building is covered in guys in white agents, so he can't actually get in. So and of course, realizing he can't get in through the main ghost portal, realizes that the only other way is to go back home and figure out a ghost portal. But what he quickly discovers is that he does ask the obviously robot IA powered drill that Jack bought how long it'll take to actually burrow a new ghost portal, and which the machine obviously is confused because he's not entirely sure what he means, and we then find out why. As it turns out, Jack bought a novelty drill that does not actually work and is not actually burrowing into the ghost zone, and of course Danny, realizing that Jack made a very irresponsible purchase, then has to rack his brain to figure out how to actually get into the ghost zone and save it, and eventually realizes that they're next door to Vlad, he has a ghost portal as well. So Danny proceeds to sneak into Vlad's house with his ghost powers and starts poking around, wondering where Vlad could have possibly hidden his ghost portal inside his new mansion. And eventually he does find it. It's behind a very cruddy picture of Vlad. But he does eventually find it and figures out how to get it open. And he eventually climbs inside of it, but then also wonders where exactly he is and how long it'll take to get to the Fenton Works from the ghost side. And does discover that he's actually next to Pariah Dark's castle, which he realizes means he's halfway across the zone. So he needs to figure out a way to actually get to the other end of the ghost zone as quickly as possible. And fortunately for him, he sees Johnny 13 on his motorcycle and decides to commandeer it so that he can get to the other side of the ghost zone really quickly. And proceeding to take the motorcycle, accidentally taking the motorcycle away from Johnny while also apologizing for stealing it, he does respond that he'll give it back once Johnny's life is no longer in danger. Of course, Johnny just looks at him in confusion, not entirely sure what he's talking about, and that winds up becoming a recurring thing. Meanwhile, the guys in white are still racking their brain on how to figure out the password to get in, and at which point Tucker brags about how stupid the guys in white are, pointing out that not only are they stupid enough to blow up the ghost zone, not realizing they're going to blow up the human world as well, but he also admits that they're stupid enough to not actually guess one of the easiest passwords in the world. At which point he accidentally tells them the password, at least they figure it out, and of course the guys in white ask him, "Says you?" Yeah, and Tucker responds, "Yes, says me," which causes them to guess that the password is Open Sesame, which they do remark is a bit of a stupid password, but they realize that since it's Jack Fenton who made the portal, they realize it's worth a shot. But in any case, Danny proceeds to continue to race through the ghost zone, while and he passes by Youngblood, who is currently dressed up in an astronaut outfit and is about to launch himself with a slingshot. And what we find out is that he also is somewhat neutral with Danny, similar to Johnny 13, because he sees because obviously Danny has defeated him twice up until this point, but he sees Danny, and immediately asks Danny if he wants to see him launch himself. And Danny, of course, responds that maybe later, but currently pointing out right now that he's on a mission to save the Ghost Zone, which of course causes Youngblood to become concerned as well. But and finally he passes by Skulker's Island, and Skulker's currently doing some target practice with his weapons from his suit, and he winds up seeing Danny. And of course he decides to try his target practice on Danny, but Danny tells him to knock it off, pointing out that he can't save the Ghost Zone if he's dead, which causes Skulker to wonder what he's blabbering about, and at which point we get a cutaway of the guys in white successfully putting in the password for the ghost portal and getting it open, with Danny realizing he's too late to stop the guys in white from getting the ghost portal open, and of course realizing that he now needs to stop the guys in white from his side, then recruits Skulker, Johnny 13, and Youngblood to block the ghost portal so the missile can't get in. And what they decide to do is they ultimately decide to use Youngblood's slingshot to launch one of Skulker's rocks into the ghost that he was using for target practice into the portal to permanently close it until the guys in white leave. And of course Youngblood is giddy about the idea that he gets to launch a rock and clog the ghost portal with it. Well, Skulker is wondering why they should even trust Danny in the first place, and Danny just tells him to shut up and push. And eventually, they are successful in launching a rock into the ghost portal, which causes the bomb to blow up before it can even get into the ghost portal. And what we find out is that the rocket is actually a bubblegum bomb. As we find out, the way essentially it is a weapon of mass destruction, but only in the ghost zone. As otherwise, it does not work as intended. It just creates a bunch of bubblegum. And this of course finally causes the guys in whites to kind of get frustrated and give up, pointing out that they've had enough of this lab, about how low tech it is, about how they're tired of getting shocked and hit by equipment and all these other things, and finally about the fact that the bubblegum bombs and rock walls appearing out of nowhere. So with that, they leave right as Zack and Maddie show up to buy the Fenton Works back, pointing out that they've had a bit of buyer's remorse, and the guys in white, of course, respond that they're more than welcome to have it. At which point they run out of the Fenton Works, and unfortunately, that's the last we see of the guys in white. But meanwhile, Danny celebrates the fact that they were successful in saving the ghost zone, and then thanks Skulker, Johnny 13, and Youngblood for helping him. But the trio of them then decide to thank Danny's heroics by proceeding to kind of decide to even the score with him and chase him off. And yeah, that's unfortunately what happens. But ultimately, the episode ends with the Fentons moving back into their old house and selling the mansion. And they ultimately decide to, ultimately what happens is, it's implied they keep the check, so it's implied that they're still rich and can afford better equipment, but ultimately they decide to move in. They ultimately decide to move back in, pointing out that that the new mansion didn't feel quite like home, and that they're more than happy to move back in with, but well, of course, Sam and Tucker point out that they're happy that Danny is back to normal, with Danny pointing out that, yeah, he does understand what Sam was talking about now, about how money just changed a person. And happy about the fact that he is now no longer going to be, that he's no longer going to have to worry about money corrupting him or anything else like that. He's just happy to be home. But, of course, it's at this point where they do note that the lab downstairs is a mess, and they are going to need to clean it up, so they immediately call for Hobson on reflex, but remember that Hobson is at the other house and they don't have him anymore. But of course, it's at this point where it's revealed that the robots that Danny built actually did follow them home, and then in keeping with like the recurring thing for the Tucker bot, it proceeds to bonk Danny on the head with its quote unquote hat. But in case, yeah, that's ultimately what the episode is. The episode explores, obviously this is the final episode of The Guys in White, but it does reveal that the Ghost Zone and the human world are connected, which does wind up playing in a bigger role in the finale. We do learn a bit more. We do see a little bit more about that going forward. But yeah, we do wind up seeing that in the finale. That winds up being important. But yeah, this episode's fun. This episode is, of course, obviously very fun. It is obviously an idea about how, you know, money can corrupt a person. That's obviously what the episode is. That's obviously what the episode is about. It's about how be careful about money, because it can influence people to become, you know, well, stupid. Case in point, we have seen that play out in real time with Elon Musk. I've talked about, I've kind of offhand mentioned that I don't like Elon a lot on this channel lately, and there's a good reason for that. Elon is an idiot, and there's a reason for that. Money causes people to do stupid things. Case in point, Elon bought Twitter for no other reason than he's having a midlife crisis. That is it. That is the only reason he has bought Twitter, and obviously it was a very irresponsible purchase. Obviously he's slowly realizing it's worthless, and he's trying to squeeze as much money as he can out of Twitter, but ultimately it's not going to work, and I can imagine that once his midlife crisis is over, he'll probably sell Twitter and it'll be back to normal. But, you know, he's owned it for a year now, and it's obviously been a mess. So, obviously he's not very, obviously, that's essentially, but it does emphasize my point. If money causes people to do having a lot of money causes people to do stupid things. And, I know, and a case in point, we've seen a couple of, you know, billionaires, trillionaires, well, more so billionaires. Trillionaire, I don't think there are any trillionaires out there, but, you know, billionaires have a lot of money, which means they can be very irresponsible with that money sometimes. And the end result of that is, you know, what's happening with Twitter. We see that play out in real time. But, ultimately, yeah. That's also what the episode is, because we also see that play out in the episode itself. It is an interesting premise, but ultimately, yeah, that is ultimately going to do it for today's review. But yeah, money can make people do stupid things, and can cause them to act in ways they wouldn't normally act. And it is just an interesting premise for the episode. But also, the guys are white. We're not going to see them again, which is sad. But in any case, that is going to do it for my review of Danny Phantom. What did you guys think? Let's get a discussion going in the comment section down below, or over on my Discord server, link in the description. Anyway, and thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, be sure to follow me on Twitter in the description below. Also, be sure to check out my Patreon in the description below as well. It's only a couple bucks a month. It does really help me out. And you guys get access to a bunch of cool perks that are my way of saying thanks, so be sure to check those out. Link is down in the description. And also be sure to go and check out my Discord. Link is down in the description as well. We are going to be doing a horror movie watch-along thing. We're watching the FNAF movie on Peacock this Sunday, so please mark your calendars for that. We're doing that. That's happening this weekend. I hope you guys are looking forward to that. But yeah, and also be sure and go and check out my Twitch. Link is down. Go check out my Twitch. Link is down in the description as well. We stream Saturdays and Sundays on that. Please go check that out. And finally, if you want to see more content from me, then be sure to check out the videos linked in the end screen. The top video is the most recent video. The top playlist more specifically, but still, top playlist was Megas Month, which I did for my birthday last year. We did Megas XLR review, so please go check that out. Whereas the video below that is Courage Month, which was Courage the Cowardly Dog themed, and we did a Courage the Cowardly Dog review all month for Halloween. So please go check that out as well. But in any case, thank you guys so much for watching. And until next time, I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace!